Because Ari does Big 12 Sirius radio stuff.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
Now, Chris Duel.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Praise be to you. Praise be to me. Praise be to the football gods on high who not only showered us with the blessings of Dallas Cowboys training camp getting underway. Thank you, soon-to-be Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson, who, well, we'll get into how his name came up in Oxnard yesterday. That's coming. But not only, and well, so I know some of you are going, hey, Cowboys training camp doesn't start till 11 o'clock this morning when they practice. No, Cowboys training camp begins when Jerry speaks at the press conference, which was yesterday. So not only did that blessing rain down upon us from the football gods, but huge bombshell in college football. I think when I say that, you already know what it is if you were awake yesterday and paid attention to the news or the social media or anything. We will get into it big time this morning. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Shannon, we said yesterday it was the beginning of football season, and not just pro football, but maybe one of the biggest college football stories, certainly of the year, maybe of the last 5 years or more, dropped yesterday.
I think my naps, typically I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and there's not a ton of stuff that breaks overnight. It's only when I nap in the middle of the day where I wake up to chaos. I mean, complete chaos. I'm thinking I'm going to get up and all I'm going to worry about is sitting down and watching that Cowboys presser. But no, we have a huge shakeup coming from Texas and Oklahoma, not from their mouths directly, as both schools are saying that they are not going to comment on quote unquote rumors. But the rumor is that both schools are looking to join the SEC, which, in my opinion, would send the Big 12 into a crumbling spiral and they would cease to exist. Schools would have to find other places to go.
Yes, they'd have to go elsewhere. I've got, regarding the question of Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, and you are a hardcore Texas Longhorn alum and fan since birth. I mean, you were attending Longhorn football games while you were in the womb and ever since. When we consider the prospect of Texas, and of course we'll consider Oklahoma as well, but just starting with Texas. And well, actually, I can ask. I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'll even include Oklahoma in the first. Are Texas and Oklahoma top 5 brands in college football and therefore college athletics? Just as a brand.
Brands?
Yeah, as brands.
We know Texas is top 3 in the world.
Boom.
Of course, they're top 5 in college football.
Yeah, Oklahoma is, I think, right on the cusp of being top 5. But I think you can say, all right, Alabama.
For sure.
Yes. I think obviously Alabama and Texas, but I think because they're always so. I think the answer to that question is yes. Okay,
yeah.
So
and important to remember. I love that you said that. Important to remember. Football is what brings in most, if not all, the money for most schools.
Yes,
but it's not just football that will be joining the SEC. It is all of the other teams, and that becomes even more interesting when you look about it, especially considering how great the Big 12 is at baseball, at basketball, at volleyball.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Yes. All right. Question number 2. Is the SEC the greatest conference in college football? That's an easy answer, correct?
I mean, if you're in the SEC, of course.
Oh, don't go all Big 12 nationalistic.
Yeah, I mean,
they
the
are.
way things are going.
They're the best.
If you were to line up the championships and
yeah.
things like that, and I think some would probably argue that the way things have been going so far with the playoff has allowed that to happen, right? Like Clemson is great and all, but they play in the ACC, which is not the greatest conference, so they kind of have a give me into that playoff each year, which is probably why Dabo is like, I don't want to expand it to 12 because I'll have to play other teams that
Exactly.
are pretty good at football. But now that we've got that expanding, I mean, that again, I mean, all of this at once, it's just so much and it's exciting. And it's also a little nerve wracking because what does that look like? Because not only does it shake up for those two teams, but do they shift the divisions within the SEC? Because they are such a giant conference. They already have that East and West division. And then, of course, as a Texas fan, you have that little other Texas team that already lies within the SEC. We actually got a response from them yesterday. If you don't
Sure
know who I'm
did.
referring to, it's Texas A&M. And they're not big fans of the idea.
Oh, no.
We could hear that audio, Dave.
Want to be the only SEC program in the state of Texas. There's a reason why Texas A&M left the Big 12. To be standalone, to have our own identity, and that's our feeling.
Of
There's
course.
a reason why Ross Bjork, who is the Texas A&M athletic director, why Texas A&M left the Big 12. It's because they got tired of being little brother to Texas, and that allowed them to make more efforts in recruiting to say, look, we're playing in the SEC. This is the kind of exposure we can give you, and that's all fine and dandy. But be honest, the conversation has and will always be that people want to see Texas and Texas A&M play, and if this is the way we got to do it, I'm okay with it. Join the SEC. I don't know what would be holding Texas or OU back if they should get an offer. I think the only thing right now standing in their way is Texas A&M as well as Missouri, because it only takes 4 no votes to decline this from the SEC standpoint, and those 2 schools have already kind of hinted that they would be a no-go. And of course, those are the 2 schools that left the Big 12 for the SEC.
And
Coincidence? I think not.
well, and don't rule out backroom arm twisting, even though A&M and Missouri seem to be indicating a hard no at this point. Back to my 2 questions, and as to why, to me, Shannon, this is a no-brainer. Yes, Texas is number 3 in the world as a brand and easily top 5 in America. I would argue Oklahoma's right there at top 5 in America. Why would you not? And the second question, is the SEC the best conference in all of college football? It's a no-brainer. Yes, it is. It's big boy football. Back to what you said about Texas A&M when they got tired of being the redheaded stepchild in football and sports in the state of Texas, and the bad little brother or little sister to the Texas Longhorns. It was a great coup in 2012. They said, you know what? We're leaving. We're going to play big boy football. It's the SEC. They got a huge recruiting advantage over what is the biggest brand, 3rd biggest brand in the world, and one of the biggest brands, if not the biggest brand in college football, UT. It was a brilliant move for Texas A&M. It was the right move. To me, Shannon, it's like if you had a great pro football team, but you weren't in the NFL. If we created just, it's like, man, we're playing around the world. We're playing other teams. We're the greatest non-NFL football team that's not in the NFL. And then the NFL invites you. Do you go? Hell yes, you go to the NFL. To me, it's a no-brainer. And to me, this makes the SEC, which is already just one step shy of the NFL almost in college football, this would make them a behemoth conference. And I'm a USC guy. I went to USC. I love my Trojans. I'm a Pac-12 guy. And I know there were rumblings, 7-8 years ago about maybe Texas and OU going to the Pac-12 and making a super conference over there, which I would have loved. And I supported that. But my God, if you're a Longhorn or an Oklahoma Sooner, the only downside of, and who said this? I heard somebody say this. Maybe it was somebody from A&M. Maybe it was Bjork from A&M saying, watch what you ask for. It might have been Paul Feinbaum, your buddy from the SEC network, saying, for Texas, watch what you ask for. The only downside is, it is big boy football. And as you mentioned, Shannon, it's going to be all sports. But yeah, you've got to compete with Alabama. You got to compete with LSU. You got to compete with the big boys. But I don't think Texas or OU shies from that. And I think the upside vastly outweighs any downside about the level of competition you're going to face.
Yeah. I mean, if A&M can do it, we can do it. And I love that Texas and OU are paired in this together, right? They understand that as big of a brand as each of them are individually, that rivalry on all sports, on all levels, is huge, and to bring that into the SEC only makes it that much bigger. And versus the A&M, who just kind of went as quietly as they could until it wasn't so quiet to kind of sneak away from Big Brother and move into the SEC. I am okay with it. I'm not going to be upset if it doesn't happen, because I think a realignment of some sort will be coming within the next 5 years. Because let's be honest, the Big 12 isn't the Big 12. It's 10 teams, where every year you have pretty much Texas and OU who run things and fall within the top 3 of the conference, give or take, a random outburst by Iowa State or Baylor or TCU. It needs something else, and if you can't get others, if you can't beat them, join them, and I think that's where they are now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. Tell you what, it's 6:20. It's a little approaching 6:21. Just a few seconds late. We do this at 6:20 and 7:20. In fact, we do it 12 times throughout the day on the 20s. A chance for you to win $1,000 over a 4-week span. We're giving away $228,000. You may as well get your name in the hat because somebody wins this money. It may as well be you. You're going to get a keyword and a place to text that keyword right now. Here it is.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Text the nationwide keyword SMILE to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's SMILE to 200-200.
Smile is the keyword. I really have a feeling, Shannon, and of course, this story was first reported by Brent Zwerneman in the Houston Chronicle. Now, in San Antonio, we pick up those stories from Brent in the San Antonio Express News, which has a partnership with the Houston Chronicle. So if you get the Express News in San Antonio, that Brent Zwerneman story that broke all of this yesterday is also in the Express News. It's the same story he wrote for the Houston Chronicle. But, he said, and I mentioned Paul Feinbaum, who covers the SEC network extensively and is a personal friend of yours, says two things. One, it looks like this is further down the tracks than people thought it was when the story first broke. And secondly, Brent Zwerneman said in a subsequent interview to his story that, expect an announcement within the next 2 weeks. And I truly believe, even though we are hearing, I saw somebody say yesterday, okay, Texas A&M will be a hard no. Missouri will be a hard no. And for some reason, somebody said the Mississippi schools will be a hard no. That's 4. Adios. It ain't going to happen. I still believe if you're the SEC and if you're running the SEC, even though the current construct is that 4 no votes could veto this, I believe there's 2 things. Number one, there's backroom arm twisting, because this is good for the SEC. And 2, that you change the rules. You say, you know what? We're going to change the policy. Now we need 6, or we're going to go with a simple majority. It not only, Shannon, in my view, does this benefit the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. This benefits the SEC, yeah. and one of this makes them unbeatable. Granted, they may already be unbeatable, but there's still a chance another super conference could be formed somewhere, somehow. Yeah. And that was the thinking behind a number of years ago, UT and Oklahoma joining the Pac-12 and joining, USC and Oregon and Arizona. That looked a little more powerful to challenge the SEC. But if they can grab UT and Oklahoma, game over. The rest of college football, it's adorable, but the SEC is going to be the be all and end all conference in college football.
Yeah, and at that point, it would also go along with this expansion for the playoffs, because with all of those teams, it wouldn't be right to only have 1, even just 2 representatives from that conference ending up in the playoffs each year, especially because they're so big, they don't all get to play each other.
True.
I like it. I like competition. I like seeing competition taken to the next level. I'm here for it. Again, I'm okay if it doesn't happen, but I'm here for it. I'm not going to shy away from it.
And you alluded to it all earlier, Shannon. The added bonus, we get the Texas A&M rivalry back, which it was a travesty. It ever went away. It's a tradition in Texas that should have never gone away. It's one of the best games on the calendar when it exists. And as you said, if this is what it takes to bring that back, that's just an added bonus to this whole equation.
Yeah. And the SEC should be smart enough to see that, because that's not a game that if you're a Texas fan or you're an Aggie fan, that you're the only ones tuning in. The nation tunes into that game, because sadly it's about more than football at that point, and it's such a great game, and it's usually, the only game on at the time. I think it's fantastic. And then with the other side of this, obviously, Texas and OU leaving the Big 12. What do you see happening there? Do you see them attempting to carry on? Do you see those teams just being like, hey, man, it was a good ride. West Virginia, we're kind of already over here in this ACC territory. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to try to get in there. And I don't know, maybe you do have a TCU trying to join the Pac-12, or I don't know where everybody goes, but I'd have to assume that they would immediately start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the Big Ten, I think all these other conferences react to the SEC becoming even more of a super powerhouse. So I think the Big Ten looks to absorb somebody from the Big 12.
Maybe from the Big 20.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think the Pac-12 says, hey, TCU, you want to come over here? Texas Tech, be interesting where they go. I think you're right about West Virginia being on the, I think, obviously those who are in power in the Big 12 would try to keep it together. But I think the ADs and the athletic programs in these universities that are left in the Big 12 would realize this ship is sinking, and let's jump ship and get on with a bigger conference. All right, quick break coming up. The high five play of the day. And you're going to find this one fascinating because Shannon selected this you'll never believe who Shannon Salty Sweeney will give a high five to next. I think it's the end of the world as we know it. REM. I'm just saying, worlds collide. Lots more talk about this incredible prospect, and a lot of people now thinking it's a probability. UT and Oklahoma going to the SEC. We will cover the Dallas Cowboys press conference yesterday, baseball, NFL, Olympics, and more with you till 9. We will introduce our soundscape stylist, Dave Ayler, coming up as well. It's the Chris Duel Show. Cinnamon Girl. Haven't heard that yet on this show. Beth Settle, good morning. Yeah, but Sam Tobias, that is why A&M went to the SEC, but the SEC's overall interests of absorbing 2 mega brands trumps that nice little desire by A&M back in 2012. And I mean, it was a good move by A&M in 2012. Beth Settle, this is the earliest I've seen you in here, I think, in the first segment. I've seen you in here after 6:30 before. Jesse Bratton, good morning. Tracy Bogert. Good to have Tracy in here, the president of the Bexar County MAGA Republicans and coronavirus deniers. Welcome in. Need a coffee refill. I just do. All right. Jason Garcia, that's a great question too. And I just think from a revenue standpoint, if the SEC went and started playing like either an all SEC or a more SEC schedule, you look at television revenues from those games. You know, I know they all like to play Sisters of the Poor to jack up their one-loss record, but that would be cool. You know, a 16-team SEC, play the other 7 teams in your conference. There's 7. Play 5 more games against the other and rotate it. That'd be cool. Be right back. Michael Brooks says, I absolutely think Texas A&M is scared, hence the comments by the AD at Texas A&M. Texas A&M probably feels it's not in their interest because it'll go back to eventually the way it always was in the state of Texas. The Longhorns were the marquee school. So, all things being equal again in a conference, who's got the mega brand? It's the Longhorns. So, and as they play each other, SEC recruiting, I think ultimately the advantage would go to the Longhorns And that annual game would, over the span of time, be won more frequently by the Longhorns. And over a span of time, the Longhorns would have a better record because of that, because they're a better brand. Yeah, and Dave Emilio, you say some of the lower tier schools in the SEC wouldn't want Texas and OU because of recruiting. They still, recruiting is still recruiting. If you're a player eligible to go to an SEC school, and even as it is, if Mississippi Ole Miss or Mississippi State is recruiting you, and you can go to Texas or OU in the Big 12, or Mississippi or Mississippi State in the SEC, which one are you going to go to? You're going to go to Texas or OU, even though those schools are in the SEC. The flip of that is those lower tier schools having Texas and OU on their schedule, having them come to their stadiums, the money they're going to bring into the SEC and the money they're going to generate for every university in the SEC, everybody's going to make more money. Yeah, Jason Garcia, I don't think there could be any talk of neutral fields, but I mean, imagine that, though. Imagine frequently Texas and OU at Alabama, and Alabama frequently at Texas and at OU. It's very mind-blowing. Wow. And as Shannon just points out in here, Texas, Alabama already on the schedule. And I'm assuming, Texas in the SEC West and Alabama in the SEC East. Imagine a frequent SEC championship game between Alabama and Texas or Oklahoma. I'm still waiting for this Oklahoma thing to shake out. Welcome back. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. In a moment, we will introduce you to our soundscape stylist, Dave Ayler. Man, lots of conversation, even during the commercials, on this big story. One of the biggest stories in college sports in the last several years. I mean, certainly from an off-the-field standpoint, the prospect of the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners going to the SEC, reporting in the Houston Chronicle and other newspapers by Brent Zwerneman yesterday sparked this story as he was reporting from Hoover, Alabama. Of course, others like Paul Feinbaum, who covers the SEC. Two of the big things involving this story are they say it's further down the tracks than you realize. I mean, this is maybe closer than you think to being announced. And we're also hearing that an announcement could happen in the next 2 weeks as far as maybe this being a done deal. Before we move forward, let's introduce our soundscape stylist. He is Mr. Dave Ayler. Once again, going plain T-shirt, man. You don't need no stinking team or logo on your T-shirt. You're Dave Ayler, darn it.
I didn't want to upstage you with your shirt because you're looking very Tommy Bahama there.
Wow, Tommy Bahama reference. So you play Cinnamon Girl on the way out, and now you go with the Tommy Bahama reference. Very nice.
Is that a Tommy Bahama?
I don't think so, but this was one of those. I was running late this morning. It's like open the closet. What's the first thing I grab? And it was this. This was absolutely no thought went into this Hawaiian shirt this morning.
Yeah, well, that was a good choice.
Thank you.
That comes across on camera very well.
Thank you. But you don't have a team logo. I don't have a team logo, but Shannon with the Austin FC. She's representing.
Game day.
Is this game day?
Game day.
Who are they playing?
I think they're playing Seattle tonight.
That's right.
Too.
The Seattle Sounders FC. Am I getting my? See, I'm
Yes.
learning my MLS little by
There you
little,
go.
man.
Nice.
Woo! Very cool. Yeah, I need to get more locked into Austin FC. I'm working on it.
It'll be easier if they played some earlier games than 8:30.
That is weird.
Weekday.
What is up with that? I don't
wanna
understand
go
that.
so bad, but I can't commit to that
What-
time frame.
What do you think is when they develop the schedule? They go, all right, we'll play this game on July 22nd at 8:30. I mean, it's not a TV deal, is it? I mean, why would you choose 8:30 and not 7:30 or 7:00?
I haven't looked to see if this is a nationally televised game or not, but you almost think like as the MLS is, it's lower than the MLB, it's lower than the NBA, right? As far as tiers. So maybe 8:30 is just considered their prime time with other games that may be on in other sports coming to an end around that time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't get it.
I'm sure they have a reason.
I get that Seattle's, on the West Coast, but you're coming to Austin.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been that way. And, when I lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, whatever, whether it was the Dodgers or the Rams or, whoever,
Right.
USC. I mean, if you play in the Central Time Zone or on the East Coast, those games are going to be at the time. You just got used to, and Monday Night Football started at 6:00. You just realized that was it. That's one of the things that happens when you live on the West Coast.
If we can go to your town and play at 8:30 Central Time start, then you can come here and play at a 6:30 Central Time start.
Totally agree.
That's all I'm saying.
Totally agree. All right, I want everybody to pay close attention to the high five play of the day, because the high five was chosen, as it often is, by Shannon Salty Sweeney, and she's giving a high five to someone who maybe isn't her favorite human being all the time, which I think is very cool. I mean, this is almost, not quite, but this is almost like me giving a high five to Kawhi Leonard. It would just be weird. Here it is, the high five play of the day, appropriately brought to you by High Five, 2 locations in Austin. In fact, if you're not going to Q2 Stadium tonight to watch Austin FC, if it is on TV somewhere, then it's a great place to watch any game, to watch Austin FC or, NFL, Major League Baseball, college football, NBA, Olympics. Catch all the Olympics at the 2 High Five locations. Great activities, great fun, games, axe throwing, laser tag, great food, great drinks, great drink specials. High Five, 2 locations in Austin. Shannon, here we go.
Does it make me a good person to give my high five today to LeBron?
Yes, it does.
After, Space Jam, what a whiff. Him not going to the Olympics.
What a whiff. It's racking it up at the it's making millions and millions of dollars.
Place.
Actually, depending on the reporting.
He got like first place in like the comedy category or whatever. Like I saw his tweet.
Wow.
The Black Widow still shut it down, okay?
Shut it down.
LeBron.
Here you are giving him a high five and you're
20%
slamming
off
Space Jam
Widow.
2.
Anyway, keeping it positive. LeBron James has been crowned the first active NBA player to reach the $1 billion threshold. That's right, LeBron
Ooh.
is a $1 billion man. And this is why I give him credit, because he's so far accumulated $330 million since his 03 NBA career start. And then $700 million from endorsements, merch, licensing, his media business. And I love that that's where, we all know endorsements rank in the cash for athletes, right? It was part of the argument as to why the Cowboys shouldn't pay Dak all that money, because look at all the money he's making on the side.
Yes.
But for so many kids that grow up and want to be LeBron or want to be KD because of how great they are at basketball, look at what all that work they put into basketball has led them to off the court. All of these other opportunities. Kevin Durant is most likely going to be the next man active in the NBA to hit that $1 billion. I think he's like in the 830 million right now.
Wow.
Which is insane. especially because he's played so much less, but he himself has made a ton of great investments. I mean, you look at what these guys do off the court. Yes, LeBron is a great human being. I get that. I will never say he's not. I just don't like some of his antics. But he's an incredible businessman and he makes all the right moves. So for anyone who says they want to be the next LeBron or the next KD, you should look at everything they do and not just the play on the court, because they are set for life. Their family is set for life. Their legacies are set. It's pretty incredible. Michael Jordan, even with inflation, was not close to making $1 billion during his playing career. Of course, he's worth $1 billion now, but it's pretty incredible. LeBron still playing, still doing it. Who knows when he'll stop? Has already crossed that. I mean, it's insane. $1 billion. I can't even fathom having $1 million to have $1 billion.
Yeah.
High five, LeBron. There you go.
Wow, Shannon Salty Sweeney, that is big of you. A man you have criticized many times on this show and off this show. You give a high five. That's maybe that's next. Someday, me giving a high five to Kawhi Leonard. Maybe
when he retires.
Or if he just admits, if he goes public and goes, man, I was such an idiot. I was so wrong to ever leave the Spurs and try to destroy a team and turn my back on a city, a franchise, and a coaching staff and my teammates. Then I'd give him a high five. But as you mentioned LeBron and you mentioned Kevin Durant, and both of those guys, mainly LeBron, much more LeBron than Kevin Durant. A lot of people, for whatever the reason, dislike LeBron. They don't like his diva antics. They don't like the way he behaves. They don't like when he whines and when he goes down. Yeah, when he goes down on the court, he acts like he's been shot, almost like a soccer player. But as you document, Shannon, when you don't like a guy, and here I am talking about Kawhi, but I can't cite as many philanthropic moments for Kawhi Leonard as I certainly can for LeBron and even Kevin Durant. We've talked about how much Kevin Durant gives back to the University of Texas athletic program after only spending a year. He was a one and done at Texas. And LeBron famously, in addition to making the $1 billion with a B now, as you mentioned, famously, so many kids in Akron, he entered a contract with them when they were in elementary school and said, if you do this, if you make these grades, and if you graduate high school and want to go to college, I will pay your college tuition. I mean, scores of kids that LeBron James entered into that agreement with and is doing that for in his hometown of Akron. So, it's one thing to be a great basketball player, and they are. It's another thing to be a great businessman or woman, and they are, Kevin Durant and LeBron James. But then to give back, and they do, that's just cool. And that's just, whatever position you get into in life, if you can lend a hand to people who can use a hand, then you're doing something good. You're not just selfish. You're not just about you and your family. You're about your fellow man and woman and children in your community. And as much as we may criticize the behavior off the court sometimes of LeBron or even Kevin Durant, it's a good idea to look at the big picture and see what else they're doing.
We talked a lot of Jeff Bezos this week, right, with his rocket going up in the air. And a lot of that criticism was, look at all this money this man has. And, these are the headlines that you see about him, right? What he's buying, what he's investing in, that's just to turn around and make himself more profit, that he's, sending people up into space and charging these incredible prices for tickets instead of reinvesting it back into the communities that are from or helps him get where he's going. And that's something that LeBron has done very well. You mentioned the school. He can certainly afford those college tuitions now with that $1 billion. But again, he's also reaping benefits from that for himself. And it's a win-win all the way around. I'm happy to give my high five to LeBron today, but only because, he's a good money manager guy.
Yes.
A good human.
And
It bothers me when he plays basketball.
And I thought, and we'll get into this as well, Shannon, I thought your high five play of the day, your high five was going to go to one Jerry Jones. Of course, and it's so amazing. Jerry would have been all of the headlines yesterday.
Right.
Normally, Jerry, especially on press conference day in Oxnard, sucks all of the oxygen out of the sports room. If it wasn't for the bombshell Texas and OU wanting to go to the SEC story, which we're all over that all morning as well. And by the way, we want to throw out that if you want to, we know we have so many Longhorn fans listening, and certainly we've got OU fans listening, and we've got A&M and all kinds of football fans and SEC fans listening. If you want to sound off on the prospect of the Longhorns and the Sooners going to the SEC anytime this morning between now and 9 o'clock, you're welcome to jump in on the phone lines, 800-707-9760. But if it weren't for that story, Shannon, another huge headline came out of that Jerry Jones press conference yesterday when he was asked about Jimmy Johnson. And you talk about being critical. Ever since those two had the falling out after winning 2 consecutive Super Bowls back in the 90s, and ultimately Jerry got all butthurt about Jimmy wanting to take too much credit. And it was essentially, they said it was a mutual agreement, but the big impetus in the breakup between Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson was Jerry Jones saying, it's my team, I own it. You're my employee, and I'll show you. You're gone. I'll go hire some bum, Barry Switzer, and I'll show you. I'll win a Super Bowl without you. Jerry Jones, for the first time ever yesterday, Shannon, becoming not only candid but emotional about the end of that relationship. So, Jerry Jones teared up when talking about Jimmy Johnson and dropping an F-bomb, saying, I blanked up. I effed up. And he never publicly admitted that before yesterday.
Yeah, it was, you mentioned the F-bomb. He saved himself from the first one. And the last one, when they were asking about, can you answer why, all that went down the way he did? He said he'd never be able to figure it out. And you're right. Did you watch it live?
I watched parts of it live, and then I had crazy family stuff going on, so I was in and out of it live.
I mean, it was very much not so much about football and more about a lot of COVID talk, obviously, and then these Jerry stories of him just kind of reminiscing and where he is now. He also got emotional about just being in Oxnard and being with the team and wanting to be the team, and he wants so badly to win a Super Bowl, and he'll do whatever it takes. That's a huge headline you'll see today. Jerry Jones willing to do whatever it takes to get to the next Super Bowl. So it's nice to see that emotion from him. It's also awkward to see Mike McCarthy sitting there like, aren't I the coach of this?
Welcome to Dallas.
He was
Mike.
in the middle of Steven and Jerry, and it was super awkward. I think Jerry almost called him Mark.
Wow. That's Mark McCarthy.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, we will get into all things Dallas Cowboys, as we should. And again, you mentioned COVID. Jerry sounding off on some very pointed comments by Michael Irvin about NFL players who choose not to get the vaccine. We are going to get into that. We are all over. It is like the biggest off-the-field college football story in the last 5 or 10 years, maybe more. Longhorns and the Sooners, will they go to the SEC? Some people believe it's a probability by now, even though A&M and Missouri and others are saying, no way, Jose. We're going to get all over that throughout the morning. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. Dave Ayler is your soundscape stylist. Tanner Carlson in the 8 o'clock hour. In the next hour, the Salty Shakedown and more. Your reaction as well. Till 9, it's the Chris Duel Show. Yeah, Jason Garcia, I saw last night nationally on radio, Freddie Coleman and somebody else were saying all of that emotion and all of those tears by Jerry Jones were because he knew the Hard Knocks cameras were rolling. Wow, Jason Garcia calling us on the phone line right now as well. Yeah, if anybody wants to jump in on the phone line, 800-707-9760. Brian Mendoza, good morning. Eric Winchester, Sam Tobias, Carl Fisher, Taro Kotani, who will be on this show in 23 hours and 20 minutes, essentially. Very cool. Jason SAFC was on ESPN2 last night. Luisa Alanis, Hector Gomez, Dave Emilio Castanuela, Ralph Balderas, Beth Settle, Michael Brooks, Jason Paniagua, Anthony Del Toro, Tracy Bogert, Jesse Martinez, Steve Duraco, the original Rock. Welcome in. Well, and the guys on the air right before us said Jonas Knox and Brady Quinn and LeVar Arrington, they were talking about, yeah, Jerry's 79 years old, and Jerry might be seeing the end of the horizon, certainly with his NFL ownership. And then, so Jerry might be getting a lot more reflective on his career and what he did right and what he did wrong. And, I think if he's being objective, certainly, you look back at where this team was with Jimmy Johnson and, and you look back that first year under Barry Switzer, that awful loss in San Francisco where they turned the ball over so many times in the first quarter and still nearly came back and won. I think this Cowboys team, if Jimmy Johnson would have stuck, would have won 4 Super Bowls in a row, maybe more. That was a big mistake. All right. I'll be right back. So Jason wants to talk to us on the phone line. Okay, cool. Thanks. Jason, if you hear me, we'll go to your phone call here. I see you there. Brian Mendoza says Boomer Sooner. OU and Texas would be great in the SEC. Eric Winchester mentioning Jerry Jones firing Tom Landry. Yeah. Although, he and Jimmy so quickly turned that franchise around and won those Super Bowls. much as we as Landry fans hated that, I mean, he was able to kind of justify that pretty quickly, sadly. Granted, it was done horribly. And to his credit, Jerry put Tom into the Ring of Honor while Tom was still alive, and Tom accepted and showed up. So
Now, Chris Duel.
my goodness gracious. We told you yesterday that it was the first day of the football season because it was the press conference day for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, Stephen Jones was there. Mike McCarthy was there, but your headliner was Jerry Jones, talking a lot about Jerry Jones. In fact, in a moment, Jason dialing us up at 800-707-9760 wants to sound off on that. In fact, you can always call us, whatever we're talking about, including the biggest college football story of the last several years, in my opinion, Texas and OU perhaps going to the SEC. How do you feel about that? 800-707-9760. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. And Shannon, before we take Jason's call, wants to talk a little Jerry Jones. Do you agree? I mean, I really believe, some of the big stories in college football are expansion of the playoffs, going from the BCS system to the college football playoff. But if the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners go to the SEC, and even the prospect of it, and you've got people like reporter Brent Zwerneman of the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio Express News, and Paul Feinbaum of the SEC Network saying this is further down the tracks than you think it is, and we might hear something within the next 2 weeks. I do think this is one of the biggest stories in years in college football. Do you agree?
I think it's up there for sure. If it happens, then absolutely. But the official word from both parties, that being Oklahoma and Texas right now, is that we're not speaking to rumors. So we'll see as these next 2 weeks unfold to see what this supposed final answer is going to be.
Very true. But again, as you know, I mean, with this still apparently being negotiated, the fact that Texas and OU are not denying this speaks volumes. And B, that's what they're not going to say, oh, hell yeah, we want to do this. Woo! Yeah, we want in. No, they're going to say exactly what they said. So
you got to save face in case it doesn't go the way that you want it to. I understand that.
And speaking of saving face, A&M, maybe you shouldn't poo-poo this so much if it happens anyway, even though you're telling us how much you don't want it to happen. Exactly.
That's right, Jimbo. We're coming for you.
We're coming, Jimbo.
Although the thing, is if Texas and OU do join the SEC, they're just going to be excited that they're in the SEC. A&M just happens to be one of the teams, and now A&M is like, oh, we got to focus on Texas. Everything's about Texas. Can't wait. Come at me, Aggies.
But even that now, Jimbo Fisher versus Sark. Not only do you get Texas and A&M, that rivalry back, but you got two mega head coaches now at each program, which is just, God, I mean, even if just that alone, bring back Texas versus Texas A&M, which it's a travesty and an atrocity that it ever went away. I'm in. Amen. All right. You're always welcome to join us on the phone lines, 800-707-9760. Jason is doing just that. Jason, thank you for waiting during the break. Jason, you're on the show. How you doing this morning?
Doing pretty good, Chris, and happy Friday Eve to you and yours.
Thank you, sir.
And don't start right away.
You are correct. Shannon and I start the weekend on Thursday, so happy weekend eve to you as well, Jason.
Right, just hearing this about Jerry Jones, and I'm going to give credit to Uncle Mike, who does his radio show in the afternoon. These are just alligator tears from Jerry Jones. That's it. It's just another ploy to get people to buy into Hard Knocks, which his team is on, going to be this coming season. So it's just, like I said, it's just another ploy for him to bring in the money to his pockets. And I'm really tired of Jerry Jones. I wish he just hand over the reins to his son so maybe Dallas can be more relevant than what they are right now.
Jason, let me get Shannon's reaction to that. And you watched it live, Shannon. When you see Jerry getting all emotional and tearing up and confessing that he blanked up when it came to Jimmy Johnson, do you think this is kind of accentuating his emotion for Hard Knocks, crocodile tears, or do you think it was genuine?
I mean, it's great timing to take that shot and then cut to in a couple weeks when Jimmy will be going into the Hall of Fame. It's great content for sure. I think I heard a story that Jerry Jones like something's wrong with his tear ducts or something. Like I feel like he doesn't cry. So and even if so, like that's been Jerry's thing since he's been a part of the Cowboys, right? He knows when and where. His marketability is fantastic. I question your comment about being relevant because the Cowboys are already at the top of being relevant. We talked about Texas being the number 3 brand of the world, number 1 brand in the world being the Dallas Cowboys, no matter what their win-loss record is. So I guess they can keep going up, but it's not like they have to jump over anybody to be relevant. So we read into what Jerry Jones says because it's funny, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what really happens on the field.
Gotta have my answer.
Say that again. Jason, I thought you said something. Oh, that was Jerry. That I thought that was Jerry. I said, man, Jason sounds like Jerry.
From his interview, he goes on a weekly radio show because every owner does that. Like it's just Jerry. It's just at this point, it's just Jerry being Jerry. If he's doing it for Hard Knocks, whatever. But honestly, he'd be doing it without Hard Knocks there because he knows that the cameras are always on the Cowboys and they're always going to be on Jerry Jones, and he's there for it. The tears were going to come no matter what. He was emotional about a lot of things, not just Jimmy Johnson, them being in Oxnard, them having camp. I wonder what he looked like when Dak's girlfriend dropped him off at boot camp. Because that happened. Miss Natalie dropping our quarterback off at camp.
We will get into that. Jason, anything else? How do you feel about the Cowboys this year? Are you optimistic?
I am actually a Seattle Seahawks fan.
Oh!
Okay, well, there we go.
Wait. Time it. Jason, where did you grow up? What town, what state did you grow up in?
I grew up here in San Antonio.
Oh! How are you a Seahawks fan? Why and how?
In the Navy, I got stationed up there in Seattle, and you know what? I fell in love with the culture out there.
All right, I'll give you that. Okay, you got me. All right, no, you got A, thank you for your service. B, okay, you were there, so you fell in love with Seattle and the region. And all right, no, but if you had never been to Seattle, and it's just like, well, under the Russell Wilson leadership, they're winning Super Bowls, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon, then I'd have a problem.
Right.
You legitimately have a reason to be a Seahawks fan, so I get it.
I need to know when you were there, and then you obviously weren't there when you were a kid, right? Because you grew up in San Antonio. So what did you do throughout your childhood years? You just didn't watch football?
I was watching the Oilers and the Cowboys.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Jason.
I was up there from 03 to 04, and that's when the Seattle Supersonics were up there, like one of the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, playing at Key Arena, man. That city got screwed when they moved to Oklahoma City. Jason, thanks so much for the phone call, man. And it's interesting. And Shannon, you talk about, you as an adult, you've not seen a Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl. I would imagine there's a lot of people like Jason who grew up in Texas, but they're so young that you look at the I went through the Landry era. I went through the Jimmy Johnson era. I saw a lot of Super Bowls. So 30 years later, I'm still thinking we're going to get more under Jerry Jones. But I can understand if you've gone through this year in, year out, and there's no reward, and they are America's team, and yes, they are the most relevant, biggest brand in the world, but still no Super Bowl year in, year out. I can see a guy like Jason living and being stationed in the Seattle area going, you know what? I think I like this team better. So,
Yeah.
I get it.
I think Cowboys fans like myself have every right to jump ship and hop on whatever, not necessarily bandwagon, but whatever team we feel fits, whatever we're looking for. But at this point, I've been with him so long, at the lowest of lows, I want to be there to experience the highs. That's what I'm waiting for. I want to
Yes.
experience that high.
And when they come, my God, and as you just said to Jason, when you questioned his saying they're not relevant, and they're the biggest brand in the world. Can you imagine if they would go to a Super Bowl or two and be knocking on the door every year, like the Packers, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, like the New England Patriots? My God, they would be it would be a quantum leap from what is already the biggest brand in the world to, kind of what they were when Jimmy Johnson and Tom Landry were head coaches at their apex, when they were going to Super Bowls a lot.
Then you have to add in, where we are now. I mean, the social media frenzy, the television, the commercials, everything just would, it's hard to imagine, not just from that standpoint, but again, from a Cowboys fan standpoint, where we've just never been close since I've been around.
Now, you brought this up a couple of minutes ago. Speaking of social media, and something happens and there's a lot of coverage and a lot of frenzy. Dak Prescott dropped off at Dallas Cowboys training camp in Oxnard by the girlfriend. What do we know about this?
There was just like a Instagram post that she did that, he was going into year 6 and she's so proud of him and he dropped him off. At first I was like, well, why is she in California? Like, why is she there? Like, they live in Dallas. What is she doing there? He should be there by himself.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also think it's kind of cute, right? I mean, most guys roll up, to camp trying to make a scene. They got a new car. They're renting, they're in California. They've rented a really nice car that they wouldn't necessarily buy for themselves. They're the vets coming to town. But here's the quarterback who just signed a giant contract. He's coming back from injury. All eyes are on him. Hard knocks, this, that, and the other. And he's sitting riding shotgun as his girlfriend just, drops him off with his little lunch sack and says, just have a great day at camp. Have fun, make friends.
Have fun, camper.
That's right.
On a certain level too, though, and because Shannon, he just signed this gazillion-dollar contract and is one of the richest athletes in the world now. That is kind of cool for him to at least symbolically make the statement, "Hey, this is my woman. I'm committed. This is a partnership." I mean, Beyonce would say, "Put a ring on it." I don't know that he's done that yet, but
he just got the contract.
All right.
It's kind of like Mahomes. He waited till he got the really, really big contract and a ring for himself.
And for her to, she's pretty wise as well.
Yeah. I mean, now that I'm saying this, I'm like, why are you in California? And thinking of past Hard Knocks, they like bringing in the girlfriends or the wives from time to time. So I wouldn't be surprising if they said, hey, why don't we'll pay for this really nice condo for you to live in for a couple weeks if you be on camera.
Well, and actually, when I was in Oxnard, it's a hotel. It's a resort hotel area where training camp is. And we had heard that some of the players, while they're staying in their own rooms in the hotel, in their own bungalows, there were hotel rooms for rent, throughout the complex. We were staying in one to cover them. We had heard that some girlfriends were being brought in by the players, and they were like staying in their own little, so that at night, when practice was over, they could go hang out with the girlfriend, which I get that. I mean, I obviously, as a Cowboy fan, I want you laser focused on training camp, but apparently that was going on. So you got to wonder where now Dak Prescott's girlfriend is staying. Is she nearby?
Along with the COVID rules, I mean, don't be the Seattle Seahawks rookie last year who, before he could even get started in the NFL, was cut from the team for trying to sneak in a girl into the hotel when that violated all things COVID protocol. And don't be like that. Do follow protocol, whatever they are.
And we're going to go to the contest here in a moment, but I see our good friend Steve Duraco on the live feed saying, and think about this, Cowboy fans, Jerry Jones fired the two greatest coaches in Cowboys history. Jerry Jones fired Tom Landry, and Jerry Jones fired Jimmy Johnson. I mean, man, you think about it that way. And who have we had since? Mike McCarthy, Chan Gailey, Jason Garrett, Barry Switzer. My God. All right. It is 7:20. We do this 12 times throughout the day on the 20s. Over a 4-week span, we're giving away $228,000 $1,000, $1,000 at a time. Your chance to win $1,000 right now. We're going to give you a keyword and a place to text that keyword. You do it, you're in, your name's in the hat, you got a shot at winning. It is the Grand in Your Hand cash contest. Here it comes.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Text the nationwide keyword bank to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's bank to 200-200.
Bank to 200-200. Best of luck. And again, throughout the day on the 20s right here, multiple opportunities for you to win. Back for a second, Shannon, to Jerry Jones. And I know Jason, who just called us, said, those were crocodile tears. And you suggest, Shannon, the cameras were rolling for Hard Knocks, and they were, that Jerry's a master manipulator. He knows a good moment. What better than, an emotional Oprah moment to get TV ratings? But Jerry Jones, say what you will about him. He lives and breathes Dallas Cowboy football, certainly on the financial side. Part of what he said yesterday was he would give anything to go to the Super Bowl. And that's, as you mentioned earlier, one of the moments when he got emotional. He said, there's no place I would rather be. And then he had to choke back some tears than right here with this football team, the Dallas Cowboys. And maybe I'm a sucker and I am for the Dallas Cowboys. They always reel me back in believing they're going to do something special. But, I think to a certain extent, this is sincere on Jerry's part. This is his life. I was listening before we came on the air, the show ahead of us, the national show, Outkick the Coverage with Brady Quinn and Jonas Knox and LeVar Arrington. They were mentioning Jerry Jones is 79 years old. I mean, clearly he's in the twilight of his career as Dallas Cowboys owner. How many more seasons in the sun and Oxnard training camps does he have? And maybe this is a moment for him to get reflective and admit that he blanked up when it came to firing Jimmy Johnson and to get emotional about, because how many more, rides around the planet and how many more rodeos as owner of the Dallas Cowboys does he have? I think maybe this is some sincere emotion on his part.
I've never questioned his lack of caring about the Cowboys and wanting the team to do well. And I think it's a great point that, his time running things the way he has might be coming to an end. And I think he wants to leave a legacy. I mean, he's made all this money, but I think his legacy that he wants to leave was that he was a Super Bowl champion with the Cowboys. And he, did that once, but he wants to get there again. And I imagine like him finally getting to that moment and then finally saying, okay, I'm going to step away now. But I think he wants to leave that legacy for himself. And then for him, I think he is sincere. He talked yesterday about being naive and being like, you can live a happier life when you're not necessarily in the know or versus being pessimistic. And I think, at times people have joked about how he just doesn't seem to really know what he's doing, or he's not the right man for the job because he makes decisions that I guess other people wouldn't necessarily make, that are a little more in tune with the X's and O's of football. But I thought it was a great point that he's happy in his own, naivety within the Cowboys organization. And that to me was probably one of the more sincere things he said yesterday during what was really a Jerry Jones press conference, and much less about the start of camp.
True. Yeah. I mean, it's all about Jerry, and a lot of it is about Jerry. Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, they are the number one brand in the world. They have been for a long time. But I think a lot of people forget when Jerry Jones bought this team, the owner was Bum Bright, who bought the team from Clint Murchison. And the Cowboys were losing, according to Jerry and according to some analysts, they were losing about $1 million a month. They were kind of down in the dumps. Landry was still the head coach, and I love Tom Landry. He's my favorite coach ever. He is a football god and a golden god to me, and I still lament and am angry with the way Jerry Jones ceremoniously dismissed Tom Landry. In fact, he found out about it on TV. We saw the night before he was fired photos around Dallas of Jerry Jones sitting in a Dallas Mexican food restaurant having dinner and beers with Jimmy Johnson, and it was a done deal that Landry was going to get fired, and Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones's buddy from the Arkansas National Championship football team in 1964, was going to be the next head coach. But the Cowboys were losing on the field and off the field, and it was, even though they were America's team, they were a team and a business and a franchise in disarray when Jerry Jones bought it. And part of the problem was the owner at the time, Bum Bright, and that was an appropriate name, Bum Bright, who owned the Cowboys before Jerry Jones. So this success story and the early success story with Jimmy Johnson was absolutely phenomenal. And even to be the greatest and biggest money earning franchise on the face of this earth to this day in 2021 is a spectacular business story for Jimmy Johnson. But Shannon, you're right. He has not won a Super Bowl without the fingerprints of Jimmy Johnson all over it. And that goes for the Barry Switzer Super Bowl with Jimmy Johnson's players, and going to be very fascinating here in the twilight of Jerry Jones' career if he can still pull it off.
I'm excited. Day one of practice. Whether or not Mr. Mike McCarthy will be wearing his Jamie Foxx glasses today, like he did yesterday, which I heard Jerry was very happy to go around telling people that, hey, his glasses, they're not Ray-Ban, they're Jamie Foxx, who everyone knows is a huge Cowboys fan himself. He looked relaxed, as relaxed as you can be for a coach of the Cowboys. He's got the beard going, he's got the new hat going.
Yeah.
He had the glasses. But he said very little yesterday, so I'm excited to see what Mike does going into day one of camp.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy's most memorable quote perhaps yesterday was when he found out the Cowboys were going to be on Hard Knocks, he nearly drove his truck off the road when Jerry told him that on the phone. He said once he got control on the truck again, he was then all in for Hard Knocks. So going to be a fascinating season for the Dallas Cowboys. We will dive back into the big story. Will the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners go to the SEC? We're covering that from all angles as well. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. The Salty Shakedown is moments away, along with this day in sports history, sports birthdays. Tanner Carlson going to talk Longhorns and Sooners to the SEC and Cowboys with us just after 8 o'clock as well. You can dive in at 800-707-9760. We are with you till 9. It's the Chris Duel Show. Brian has the Cowboys at 11-6. Brian, I would love that, man. I hope you're right. Okay. I think I killed the coffee. I did.
You tell Shannon and every other person tuning in, Jerry Jones can go to the Super Bowl. He can buy tickets early and be there every year.
Andy will.
There you go.
Very good. All right. What's going on here? Do you have that Landry audio bleeped that Shannon sent you?
The one she put in the
Yeah.
private chat, it doesn't open. It just says cannot open audio, retry.
Okay.
That may be because if I have more than 2 windows open on this computer, it locks up.
All right, let me take a look at it.
Anyway, I just got it open now.
Okay. Yeah, he drops an F-bomb. We would have to bleep that.
I'm not gonna be able. I'm probably able to edit until the top of the hour.
Okay. If you do, then we'll do it like in the 8:35 segment. Taro, I did. That was an outstanding video. Thank you. We'll talk about that when we have you on tomorrow. Wes Perkins, I'll read that on the air. That's interesting. Welcome back. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Lots going on in the world of sports. The two big headlines, of course, Dallas Cowboys training camp underway. We're reacting to a lot of what went on yesterday, mostly from Jerry Jones, but also some comments from head coach Mike McCarthy and Stephen Jones, the future boss man of the Dallas Cowboys, the son of Jerry Jones, and of course the bombshell story that insiders are saying is further down the track than you might think, and that is the University of Texas and Oklahoma asking the SEC if they can be a part of the SEC. And part of that reporting says we should hear an announcement within the next 2 weeks on that story. And to that end, Shannon, this is kind of interesting. Our good friend Wes Perkins on the live feed, and you can catch the live feed either via Facebook, AM 1300 The Zone, or Ticket 760's Facebook page through YouTube or Twitch. Wes Perkins says, I am in favor of OU and UT going to the SEC. Do what's best for you, your university. He says, I want the Southwest Conference 12 to replace the Big 12. Take the remaining schools and then add the University of Houston, SMU, UTSA, and North Texas. That's kind of interesting. And I think, and as you know, Shannon, we have Andy Everett on this show quite a bit. He is the voice of UTSA athletics. But for schools like Houston, SMU, and North Texas, if they have aspirations in being in a bigger, more Texas-centric conference, it's that, that might be one of the things that the Big 12 morphs into. I kind of believe that teams like Texas Tech and Baylor and others would probably, look to other conferences like the Big 10 and, see if they could kind of merge in what might be bigger conferences for them, what's left from the remnants of what would be the Big 12 if Texas and OU left.
Yeah, I think they would need to go something like that route because the Texas crop of kids would get smaller, I think, with Texas and OU going to the SEC. I mean, I think that's part of the deal is that the SEC's been taking so many kids from Texas, and the argument against Texas has been, well, they can't even keep their own kids in state. And so Texas joining the SEC and Oklahoma joining the SEC, I think, makes that crop even smaller for the schools that are in Texas. Going
to be fascinating, and we might hear something sooner than later on whether or not that comes to be. We'll dive more into that big story throughout the morning here. In fact, Tanner Carlson going to jump in with us as well at the top of the hour. In a moment, Shannon's Salty Shakedown. But first, we'll give you some sports birthdays, including a big Dallas Cowboys birthday today. But first, this day in sports history. This day in 1963, in their second clash, Sonny Liston once again knocks out Floyd Patterson in the first round of their boxing match at the Convention Center in Las Vegas. Sonny Liston retains his world heavyweight boxing title. Sonny, enjoy it, because there's a kid named Cassius Clay who is coming for you in a couple of years. On this day in 1990, it was the 77th Tour de France, won by American Greg LeMond. Before Lance Armstrong won all those Tour de France, before he won all those, Greg LeMond was like the big deal pre-Lance Armstrong. On this day in 1994, former NFL running back and broadcaster O.J. Simpson pled, quote, absolutely 100% not guilty in his murder trial for the deaths of his ex-wife, estranged wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman. And finally, we've been talking a lot of Jerry Jones this morning. On this day 2 years ago, in 2019, the Dallas Cowboys, for the first time, were valued by Forbes magazine at $5 billion. Once again, the Cowboys were ranked as the most valuable sports franchise on the face of the earth at $5 billion by Forbes magazine 2 years ago today. Second was the New York Yankees at $4.6 billion. And third, the soccer team Real Madrid at $4.2 billion. Jerry Jones was crying tears of joy on this day 2 years ago. That's your sports history. How about some sports birthdays? I mentioned Sonny Liston got a big win today in 1963. It was his birthday on this day. Sonny Liston, born in 1930. He was the world heavyweight champion from 1962 to 1964 when Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, beat him. Sonny Liston was born in Johnson Township, Arkansas. He passed away in 1970. Also born on this day, troubled San Antonio Spur, later Toronto Raptor, Alvin Robertson got into some legal problem. Born on this day in 1962. Born on this day in 1966, Heisman Trophy winner, 9-time Pro Bowler. Born in Dallas, Texas, went to Notre Dame. College Football Hall of Famer, Tim Brown. Happy birthday, Tim Brown. Born on this day as well in 1972 in Los Angeles, California. Super Bowl champion in 2002. One-time Dallas Cowboy, Keyshawn Johnson. Born on this day. And finally, speaking of Dallas Cowboys, born on this day in 1995. We hope he has a good first practice at 11 a.m. in Oxnard. I hope he's not low-key faded, bro. Happy birthday, Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke, don't do any bong hits for your birthday, please. If you do them after practice in the privacy of your own Oxnard bungalow. Those are your sports birthdays. That's your sports history on this July 22nd. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here it is. Football season has begun, and a long time ago it began, and it continues. Your daily Salty Shakedown.
Right. Let's keep it with football while we're on the subject here. It's been a minute since we've heard rumblings about Tim Tebow, the 8th on the depth chart for tight end at Jacksonville Jaguars. Some may find it hard to believe that he's actually going to be going into training camp. But he is, and he's there, and he's got a new endorsement deal to go along with it. That's right. Tim Tebow has joined Clean Juice, a juicing chain. There's a couple in Texas, not in Central Texas. I think they're in the Houston College Station area. But nonetheless, Tim Tebow's got himself a new endorsement, and he will be part of their first ever national TV ad campaign. If you go to their website, he is currently featured in a little video. He says what he loves about the company is that they are 100% organic. There's no GMOs. You know exactly what you're getting. It's very transparent. And I love it for Tim that he's able to still get endorsements now that he's back in football. I mean, he gets endorsements from time to time just because of his celebrity, but it is interesting to see that these other 1s and 2s tight ends for these teams aren't getting the same recognition. And now Tim Tebow getting a national ad campaign heading into the football season. Also interesting, I feel like there's a huge health movement, right? Going into the season, we've got Tom Brady with Subway and now Tim Tebow with clean juice. Chris, are you a juicer?
I'm not a juicer, but now that Tim Tebow is endorsing this juice, I might become a juicer. I might, and I hope that somehow, some way, and it'll be a miracle, but he is the Lord's tight end.
That's right.
Tim Tebow makes the Jacksonville Jaguars opening day roster.
Don't let the name Clean Juice fool you, because they also have acai bowls, bowls that they call greenwa, which is like a salad with quinoa. They've got wraps, juices, shots, smoothies, and of course some avocado toast, because who doesn't want $7 toast?
$7 toast.
And I love you mentioned he's the Lord's QB.
Yes.
So let's keep it with the Lord now.
Thank you, Lord.
Let's go over to the Lord's Chicken, because who doesn't love some Chick-fil-A?
Yes.
Well, Giannis loves Chick-fil-A, as he headed to the Chick-fil-A drive-thru with both the NBA championship trophy and his MVP finals trophy in tow. And we have some audio because he was on Instagram Live during his entire ride to and through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Here that is.
Can I have a 50 piece? Sorry, I will put you. Can I put your camera? Do you mind or no? Sure. There's 150,000 people watching you right now. Really? Yes. So can I have please a 50 piece Mac Minis, 50 exactly, not 51, not 49 chicken minis, yes, 50. And let me have a large drink, no ice, half Sprite, half lemonade.
I don't know if 50 is just his normal order number. I don't know if he's referencing the 50 years it took for the Bucks to win another championship.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's the 50 he's referencing for what he scored on that NBA Finals Game 6 winning night. But nonetheless, 50 is a lot. People also loved the half lemonade, half Sprite combo. I guess I haven't heard that before. It makes sense, right? Because Sprite is like a lemon lime mixture, and I know people love that lemonade there at Chick-fil-A, so I guess it's great. Chick-fil-A, no doubt, lots of people were saying they were getting in their cars to go try that out, and I'm sure they ordered some chicken to go along with it. 50 seems like a lot. I can barely handle an 8 count. But Chick-fil-A, if they were smart, they would do something like McDonald's has been doing as of late, which has been partnering with huge name brand musicians who create their own meals. And most of these meals consist of things that are already on the menu. So it's not like they have to go out and create anything new, but they're just kind of grouped in a way that these acts like to order them, and they create the Travis Scott meal or the BTS meal. And then it's a great marketing tool. People come in and they say they want that meal. Chick-fil-A yet to respond, but they need to create the Giannis meal. It might be crazy. How many people would come in and order 50 nuggets? Well, now we have the Giannis Chick-fil-A challenge. All right. A large lemonade and Sprite mix with 50 nuggets. I wonder what kind of sauce he got. We still don't know the answer to that, but I love this. I love him having the trophies. He talked on the way there about how, he's still got them because he feels like he's dreaming. And if they're not around, then maybe he'll wake up and find that they're gone. I love it. It kind of reminds me of Patrick Reed winning the Masters and then driving through the Chick-fil-A Open with his Masters jacket. The only difference is that, like, just in general, people don't really like him. They get bad vibes from that dude, and everyone loves us some Giannis. He wants a 50-piece meal, Chris. Not 49, not 51, 50. Chris, how many Chick-fil-A minis can you eat?
My God.
In one sitting.
I can't eat that many, but I agree with you. Chick-fil-A needs to jump all over this, and Sprite as well. Sprite needs to make sure that Giannis is their dude.
He's been doing it enough. Get Giannis in the Sprite game.
And come out with a different Sprite that has more lemonade infused in it. But how cool, Shannon, as well. He didn't go to some swanky restaurant, the highest end restaurant in Milwaukee. He didn't go to a strip club. He goes to Chick-fil-A.
I love that you mentioned
I think it's cool.
I love that you mentioned strip club, because he starts the video by saying, I should be in Vegas right now. I should be partying it up, but I am going to Chick-fil-A. The innocence of it all, and I just love him more and more. And this video, if you haven't seen it, there's the whole live is available on the internet, and he's just so cute. And 50 nuggets, y'all. That's the Giannis challenge. All right, finally, we've got to talk some Olympic news because that's just the season we're in. And yesterday we talked about the Polish team having to deal with bringing too many athletes with 23 to send 6 swimmers home. You're already having to deal with COVID, and then you throw something like this into the mix. Well, now the Olympics are dealing with something that they certainly didn't think they would have to deal with. As we know, softball has already started. It started, I guess it was technically Tuesday night here in America. Team USA now 2-0 in the tournament so far after beating both Italy and now Canada. They have no scores on, no runs on them yet, so they're playing pretty well. Kat Osterman leading the way. But that area, the Azuma Sports Park, where these softball games are being played, are currently under bear watch, Chris, because Tuesday, an Asian black bear was spotted in the area.
Wow.
And then it came back Wednesday, just hours before the first game. They haven't been able to capture it. They're still looking for it. They're hoping it doesn't disrupt any games. It hasn't yet. But the Olympics have not made an official comment on it, but writers and reporters in the area have said they've been trying to play loud music. They've been shooting up firecrackers to try and get rid of it, but they have not been able to do so yet. We already have COVID to deal with, and now you want me to go play with the chance of a bear coming and mauling me? Are you kidding me? I'm not an expert on animals, but that I don't know. I maybe say, can we not play anywhere else? Chris?
Wow.
Have you ever come in contact with a bear?
I've never come in contact. I was like at Yosemite once many years ago. And in the distance, I saw a bear and I wanted nope. It was like 100, maybe 200 yards away. And I wanted no part of that bear. And I went in the other direction and it left me alone. Thank God. I'm just, as you say this, I've never associated bears with Japan. I mean, Japan, it's surrounded by water. How you say it's an Asian bear. How did bears, I gotta research it. How did bears ever wind up in Japan like hundreds of years ago? Did they come from China? Did they get on a boat? How did the bears get to Japan? I don't know. That sounds weird to me.
It's gotta be like the feral pig situation in Hawaii, right? Like they got there somehow. And I guess that's how they ultimately ended up with the name Asian black bear. But that's terrifying, and I feel for those softball athletes that not only do they have to focus on the game, but the fact that a bear could come running at them at any moment because they just can't get it together. I don't know if they have bear experts in the area, but let's work on getting that taken care of for the rest of the time at the Olympics. Could you imagine if it was in the village?
Oh my God.
Village, and I mean, we've got enough to deal with right now, folks. Let's get rid of the bear. That's it. Today's Salty Shakedown.
Spectacular Salty Shakedown as always. And that'll be a good question tomorrow on the show in the 6:00 hour, live from Tokyo. And he had tickets to see the Olympics. Our good friend and listener, Taro Kotani, who is now our official on-site Tokyo Olympics correspondent. He's going to join us tomorrow, Shannon. We will ask him, how many bears has he ever seen growing up and living in Tokyo and in Japan? It's a good question. I've never thought of bears in Japan before.
It's like, did it escape from a zoo?
Yeah.
What's happening here? And if there's one bear, is there more bears?
Exactly.
Is that a mama bear?
It's a great question.
You got to deal with.
Woo.
Not safe.
No.
Not safe. I'm more worried about the bear than I am COVID now.
So am I. We're going to keep an eye on the bears in Japan, in Tokyo for the Tokyo Olympics. Coming up, we are going to dive back into the huge story in college football. In fact, the two stories that are the biggest today are, of course, the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. Apparently, no comment officially from either university, but according to reporting, they have contacted the SEC. They are interested in becoming players in big boy football in the SEC. And as Shannon mentioned, that means every sport, SEC athletic programs, if this comes to pass. We'll talk about this and the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones, his press conference yesterday at Oxnard, along with head coach Mike McCarthy and Stephen Jones. Our good friend Tanner Carlson going to join us to talk all things Cowboys and Texas Longhorns and OU. We're going to get into that with Tanner coming up. And once again, If you want to jump in on the phone lines, 800-707-9760. And we will bring you the audio of Jerry Jones, that emotional moment yesterday talking about Jimmy Johnson. And we will bleep the F-bomb because we should. That and a lot more coming up. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. I'm Chris. Till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Woo! Tanner Carlson headed into the studio. Bill Brendel. Haven't seen you in a long time, Bill Brendel. Welcome in. Dean Stone, welcome. Thank you, Eddie Mendoza. Eddie said, per Wikipedia, bears crossed the land bridge between the Korean Peninsula and Japan 500,000 years ago, which is consistent with paleontological evidence. Wow, Eddie. Who knew? I didn't know. Wikipedia knew. Wes Perkins. My family and I had a close encounter with 2 black bears in Big Bend. I saw them running down the mountainside and pointed them out to my wife and family. We kept going and were on last few feet of the trail, and the bears were blocking us. I yelled, got big, and the bear looked at me like, oh, brother, not interested. Wow. Yeah, you don't want to mess with bears. It can go bad. Wes also writes, the best thing about the Milwaukee Bucks, they showed patience over the years. They didn't blow it all up with playoff disappointment in previous years. They stuck with Mike Budenholzer when they could have fired him and built the team the right way through the draft. Got to be happy with a team and a franchise earning a title the right way. Yeah, and remember, Giannis was a number 15 overall pick. And cool, thanks. I don't think we'll play it here, but we might if it comes up with Tanner. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Giannis was a number 15 overall pick, and the Spurs have the number 12 pick coming up in 8 days in the draft. It would be nice if they got somebody who breaks on through. There he is.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So it's up to you. If you don't want me to, I won't, but I may bring up that you're moving on to greener pastures. Are you okay with that? Okay.
And like I said, I mean, if you need me to call in or whatever, if you want to keep.
Yeah, I'd like to on some level. I mean, obviously in studio was ideal.
And it's easy.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, let's
just let me know. I mean, I don't want to force your hand or anything.
Yeah. Well, let's see how it works for you there if they're cool with you coming on. And then we'll figure it out from there. Wes Perkins. Yeah, Wes, I saw you post about that. Wes was wearing a blue Cowboys shirt during the bear encounter. It could be the blue jersey jinx, Wes. The blue jersey jinx is real. Did you watch the press conference?
I did.
Cool. So the main topics obviously will be that and Texas OU to the SEC.
We only have 2 topics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Easy show.
We could go 4 hours on those.
No kidding. I'm sure y'all have talked plenty on really probably both of them.
Yeah. Well, and it's Zeke's 26th birthday. Will he get low-key faded bro today?
He looks like he's in the best shape of his life, though.
I hope so. Please, Zeke.
You can be in great shape, but hold on to the damn ball. 2 undrafted rookie free agent tackles and a hurt offensive line and no quarterback, and you're going to get 900-something yards and not be effective? Sure.
Yeah.
You have all the excuses. But the fumbling,
No.
that's not on
Yeah.
anybody but him.
Yeah.
That's what bothered me more than anything else about his performance.
Yeah.
Because it's not even close between his fumbles in second place.
Yeah.
It's like 4 or 5 more than the next person down.
Wow.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I just think he's not focused. I don't think he's disciplined. I don't think he's a character guy.
You're not going to have a team full of character guys.
True.
Your entire team's not going to be made up of preachers and leaders and stuff. But
Right.
But at some point, if you're going to be the guy, you'd like to see some at least on-field responsibility.
Yes.
This is the Chris Duel. Now, Chris Duel.
My goodness, what a time in football. We said yesterday, and we were right, football season has begun. When Jerry Jones moves to that microphone in Oxnard, California, and begins to shed tears and speak and speak and speak. It was about an hour-long press conference yesterday. Then football season has begun, and certainly that would have been the big topic today. But then the bombshell, as first reported by Brent Zwerneman of the Houston Chronicle, who's a big Aggie reporter. His coverage also appears in the San Antonio Express News and other papers. The University of Texas, the Longhorns, and the Oklahoma Sooners are interested in joining the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. That is big boy football. That is a huge story. We're all over the Cowboys. We're all over this UT Oklahoma to the SEC story. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. And how perfect that our in-studio guest is the guy that is a hardcore Cowboys fan and a hardcore Longhorns fan. Other than golf, when we talk to Tanner Carlson, it's either Cowboys or Longhorns. And as you said when you stepped into the studio, Tanner, those are the two stories now, Cowboys and Longhorns OU to the SEC.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, man, I guess you could just flip a coin, whichever one it lands on, we can go from there. But how about we start with Cowboys and then we'll finish up with the Longhorn stuff.
All right, first of all, and Shannon and I talked about this, and I've seen some people say Jerry got very emotional a couple of times during the press conference, maybe more emotional than we've seen him. Certainly when he talked about Jimmy Johnson, he said something we haven't heard him say. When you saw Jerry get emotional, I'm hearing some people say, he knew the cameras were rolling for Hard Knocks. That wasn't real. I felt real to me.
I don't think he's that good of an actor. I think we'd see him in more movies if he could just cry on command. I don't think he's, up for any nominees of best actor and, best performances or anything like that. So I don't think he has the capability of just crying on demand just because there's cameras in front of him. I would say it was genuine. I think that he truly has some regrets, especially with how he handled not only Jimmy Johnson, but probably how he handled Tom Landry, which we've seen him say, and he's come out and said how he wishes he could have handled the Tom Landry situation better. He knows he could have handled the Jimmy Johnson situation earlier or better. And then early 2000s when it came to the Dave Campo days and all that stuff and how he was running the team and how it was general manager. I'm picking the players. I'm doing the scouting. I'm doing everything. He probably wishes he could take that back and probably do it a little bit better then as well. And then also building rosters for some of his favorite guys like a Jason Witten, a Tony Romo, and how this team has never really been able to overcome him. at the end of the day, I think he's kind of finally starting to take a back seat and realizing, there's some things I wish I could have done a little bit differently.
Well, and Dave Ayler, I think we've got that audio of Jerry Jones yesterday when asked about Jimmy Johnson. Of course, Jimmy Johnson, very newsworthy now that he's going to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in about 2 weeks. In fact, tomorrow we'll speak with James Allen, who's on the board of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we'll get the latest on what's coming in the next 2 weeks. Of course, the Cowboys, the reason training camp started a little early for the Cowboys is they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio on August 5th. But let's listen to Jerry Jones. Let's get Shannon's reaction and Tanner Carlson's reaction to maybe what was the biggest moment of the Dallas Cowboys press conference from the opening of training camp at Oxnard, California yesterday.
Things that come to my mind. We had a great run of it. He's a great coach, and I'm proud to have him as a friend and proud to have had the times that we had. We just had a great experience. What? I've never been able to know why. That, not just that, but anything else. No, I can't answer those questions.
A big moment there, and he's saying he'll never know why he blanked up, and of course needed to be bleeped for radio.
And do y'all know what they're referring to at the Barry Switzer story that he told in the press conference? Do we know the backstory on that?
Do you have that?
Yeah. Well, when he was hiring, he told it during the press conference. But for those who don't know what it is, while he was hiring Barry Switzer to replace Jimmy Johnson, he brought him into his office. And Barry said, "Where's Jimmy?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I want to see Jimmy." And Jerry was like, "You're replacing Jimmy. Jimmy's gone. He's not coming back." He goes, "No, I need to sit both of you on this couch and know why y'all effed this up."
Wow.
And so it was Barry wanted to know, just like anybody else, as to why y'all couldn't work out. So that's what he's referring to whenever they asked, the whole Barry thing.
It's an amazing story. And Shannon, we just heard that emotion. And when you heard that yesterday, what were your thoughts? And we've had almost a day to process it now. Why do you think now is the time that Jerry Jones, for the first time, seems to express his regret over how he handled Jimmy Johnson?
I think it's a combination of time, sense, and timing, in that Jimmy is going into the Hall of Fame, and a big reason as to why he's going into the Hall of Fame is because of what he did with the Cowboys. And then, if you want to say it's for Hard Knocks, whatever. But he was asked the question, and Jerry never shies away from answering a question. In fact, if you don't let him answer the question, he will get mad at you for not letting answer the question.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where I thought it was genuine. I didn't think it was some kind of charade for cameras or something like that. I mean, how many times has he been asked that in front of cameras before, and he's never shown that kind of emotion before? I mean, he's always he's always been pretty guarded, but also pretty open in front of cameras, and he says exactly what's on his mind. Now, he'll go about it a roundabout way, and he'll take 45 minutes just to answer one question. That press conference probably could have been wrapped up in 20 minutes, but with Jerry being Jerry, it was about an hour long. So, no, I thought it was great. And it kind of, he also mentioned about Jimmy Johnson being in the Ring of Honor, and when all of that's going to happen. And he said, "I want to be respectful to Jimmy this year and letting him enjoy being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Let him get into the Hall of Fame, and then maybe next year we'll visit the Ring of Honor, or, sometime whenever all this kind of excitement and this dust has settled, we'll talk about Ring of Honor."
Do you think maybe the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction for Jimmy Johnson kind of forces Jerry Jones' hand here with the Ring of Honor is long overdue. Should have happened long, long time ago. Jerry Jones' admission, or at least acknowledgement, that Jimmy Johnson was a huge part of this franchise's success in the Jerry Jones era. Because it's kind of an embarrassment now. It's like, wait a minute, he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and you haven't inducted Jimmy Johnson into the Ring of Honor. I kind of get the answer that we'll let the spotlight be on the Hall of Fame this year, and maybe we'll do Ring of Honor next year. But it almost really shines a light on the ridiculousness of Jerry Jones waiting this long for Jimmy.
Well, that's because typically you see it the other way around, right? You typically see players or coaches being into their team's ring of honor. They're typically honored by their team before they're honored by the league. And it has kind of been a taboo way of going about it in terms of it being the opposite with Jimmy Johnson and the Cowboys. And there's obviously the history between Jerry and Jimmy and all that. So yeah, as long as it happens while they're both still alive and it's not some, ghost of Jimmy getting inducted into the Ring of Honor past or after Jerry goes, Steven puts him in or something along those lines. As long as that doesn't happen, I'm okay with it.
All right, I want to make sure we spend enough time on the other huge story while we have you in studio, Tanner. The Texas Longhorns, the Oklahoma Sooners have, according to reporting, and they don't deny this, expressed interest in joining big boy football, the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. Shannon and I have talked about this extensively this morning. You're a huge Longhorn fan. Before knowing Shannon's take or my take on this, your take, should UT, is this something UT should be pursuing? Is this something the SEC should welcome?
Not only am I a huge Longhorn fan, but I loathe and despise and hate everything there is to hate about the SEC.
Wow.
So, no, I wasn't thrilled when I saw this news. I wasn't jumping with joy. I was like, oh boy, Texas gets to play Mississippi State every year or Arkansas or A&M. I didn't care about the competition. I didn't care about the teams we're joining. My whole take on it is Texas is if Texas goes into the SEC in 5 years, whenever their media contract with the Big 12 is up, when Texas joins in, and they're only going to grow their brand from here on out, they will be the number one revenue gaining team. The revenue that they earn every year is top in the country. If not, it's one of the top, if not the top team in the country, regardless of what conference they're in. So when people, I know money, I get the money thing. You don't need to explain to me how much more money they can make or whatever, but how much more, you can't go further than the top. You're already making bukus of money in the Big 12.
Or could you though?
You could probably.
But I mean, because just like adding the Texas versus Texas A&M game, I think that's going to generate huge money for Texas, for the networks,
Texas
for A&M.
Oklahoma is way bigger and always has been way bigger than Texas A&M.
All right, it's bigger, but there's a buttload of money to be made for an annual SEC Texas versus Texas A&M game.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's always going to be the one thing I will give the SEC. And I will continue. I will always stand by the fact that they market their brand, they market their conference better than anybody else in the country by far.
Because it's better football.
By a long shot. Is it better football?
Yeah.
Texas A&M,
LSU, Alabama.
Texas A&M's schedule this year was so bad, and everyone rants and raves about how good they were last year with one loss. That Florida team was a little overrated. They weren't as good as they made it out to be because there are, believe it, people, well, watch out. I'm going to say something that's crazy. There are scrubs in the SEC. There are Vanderbilts. There are Tennessee.
There's scrubs in the NFL.
There are scrubs
but it's the NFL.
There's definitely scrubs in the Big 12 as well. I get that. There's scrubs everywhere you're going to look. I get that. But what I'm saying is how much now for OU, the thing with me is OU can make more money. OU can get more recognition. The Big 12 has handled OU's situation terribly. I understand if OU fans or OU wants to go, but the thing is OU and UT are so interlocked together.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one without the other. It's a bargain trade. You're either both stay or both leave. There's no one or the other. I understand that. And OU fans should be annoyed and ticked off with the Big 12 and how they've marketed OU. OU is by far and away should be the most recognizable team in the Big 12, but they're actually behind Texas when it comes to most recognized in terms of value, revenue, things like that. And they're in Norman, Oklahoma. I get they're not in Austin, Texas. They're in Norman, Oklahoma. But so that makes a lot of sense to me. And like I said, it kind of goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Will it be for as a fan, me sitting down watching football every week? Yes, it'll be great. It'll be good, fun football to watch. Like that's not an argument. I would love to see. And another thing is, before I get off track, is that Texas is. I've always appreciated Texas scheduling non-conference opponents that are in the SEC. like an LSU, like a Georgia in a couple of years, Arkansas this year, not shying away from the USCs of the world in non-conference play. Texas does a great job of that. Texas understands win or loss, that's revenue, that's money, that's recognition, that's branding, that's marketing, all that stuff that goes into it. And it also, if you beat one of those teams, that sets you up perfectly for a nice run into postseason play. Another thing is, no matter what conference these two teams are in, OU, Texas, you could be in the Mountain West Conference, you could be an independent. If one of these two teams has one loss and wins their conference, it doesn't matter where they're in the playoffs.
Right.
The NCAA is not going to miss out on an opportunity in terms of television deals and media, in terms of Texas being a one-loss team, whether they're in the Big 12, if they're playing in Europe somewhere, wherever, they're going to be in the college football playoffs if they have one loss. Same with Oklahoma. They're the same when it comes to branding and marketing and stuff like that, and success. So I get it, but apparently there was also another report that one of the big selling points for getting Coach Sarkisian on board and on staff was the attempt and the want and the mission to get to the SEC.
Shannon, Tanner, not as enthusiastic about Texas going to the SEC as you are or as I am. Your thoughts about Tanner's kind of lukewarm about the idea?
Well, I think, again, we have to remember it's not just the football teams that end up going to the SEC. It is everything from football down to the sports people don't necessarily pay attention to, but Texas tends to dominate: the rowings, the swimmings, the golf, the tennis. Everything goes with it. And because of the SEC's brand, football will always be that huge moneymaker. But I think there's a lot to gain for those other sports as far as visibility and money to be made, and competition. And competition obviously breeds greater athletes and helps with recruiting, and all of those things combined. You mentioned, Texas could be in any conference for football and lose a game and make it into the playoffs, but we haven't always seen that with OU. And again, when you're playing in a Big 12 with only 10 teams, even if these two teams are undefeated or have that one loss, when the difference of the rest of the teams are so far, I mean, it's like the difference between a starting quarterback and a backup. Like, it's just the drop off is too much. Whereas in the SEC, you do have those elite programs, and then those great programs, and then the good programs, and then the not so good programs. Vanderbilt, we're looking at you. I think that helps when it comes to the postseason and making a case for yourself, because especially as we get to where they expand the postseason, it's not just going to be about brand. They're going to have to start adding those schools that have gone on to be undefeated, whether it's the Notre Dames or whether it's the Cincinnati's or the UCFs of the world. So you have to look at it as a whole. I've said it. I'm okay if they don't make it to the SEC, but I will be excited if they do. You just won't hear me chanting SEC at the top of my lungs.
Never.
When another SEC school does something good.
Never. I will never chant SEC in my life. I don't care if Texas wins a national championship. I'll chant Texas, but you'll never hear me say and chanting SEC ever. I think, in terms of also recruiting, and I think Shannon makes a fantastic point when it comes to all the other teams, and athletics are involved in this as well. When it comes to recruiting, I don't think you're going to get too much better of recruits. And like A&M benefited from better recruiting because they were mediocre in recruiting in the Big 12, because they were along the lines of an Iowa State. They were along the lines of a Texas Tech. They were along the lines of a TCU, Oklahoma State. They were in that middle range. And so benefiting from being the only team in Texas to be in the SEC benefited their recruiting. I don't think you're going to benefit recruiting when you're Oklahoma and Texas. Your recruiting's already near the top of the board. You're always going to have a top recruiting class regardless of what conference you're in.
But I think you add a little more luster. I agree with you that they've got a huge recruiting opportunity every year because of their brand, Texas or Oklahoma. But I think you go into the SEC. It's like, we're now in the same conference as Alabama, LSU. It's big boy football. It is the best conference in college football, because that was, if you're Alabama, if you're LSU, if you're A&M, if you're Mississippi State, you were at least able to say, this is the greatest conference in college football. You're
Yeah.
going to be playing against the best. The NFL is going to take notice of that. Football fans are. So what is already huge for Texas with their brand, I think you actually do increase that opportunity somewhat being in the SEC.
And you might be right. You might be 100% right. You might see you might see Texas and OU beating out Alabama for recruits and beating out LSU's and being on the top of that ESPN 100, recruiting board. You might see that. It's just going to be, and it's not, people are like, well, Texas doesn't want to have harder competition to play against in the regular season. That has nothing to do with it. I mean, I understand there's the money aspect of it. And I'm not totally like, I hate the fact of Texas playing in the SEC. It is kind of a thing of like, I hate that Texas and OU had to go to the SEC and the SEC didn't come to Texas and OU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it could have been a little of both. I mean, we're hearing it reported as
Right.
Texas and OU expressed interest, but
right. And they reached out to them.
I mean, if I'm the SEC, I want those two mega brands in my conference.
And that might be an ego thing on my part.
Yeah.
It might be. It might have, it might be an overblown kind of thing that's like kind of irritating me just as slightly as that. I've always felt like OU and Texas were those brands where the SEC should reach out to them and ask them to be a part of their conference instead of vice versa. But now talking about actually joining the SEC, now 4 teams, all it takes is 4 teams to deny
at this point.
That
can be changed.
Now,
and there can be backroom arm twisting.
Of course. Just as it stands right now, because that's what we know right now.
Yes.
We know 2 programs will say no, Mizzou and Texas A&M.
That's what we're hearing.
They
Yeah.
left the Big 12 for a reason, to get out of their shadow.
Yeah.
And now they're just in the shadow of LSU, Alabama, and Florida, and Georgia, and all
Right.
those teams. So that was stupid on their part. But nonetheless, are there 2 other teams that you would consider that would say no? To me, there's not. To me, there's not 2 other teams in the SEC that would say no, other than Mizzou and Texas A&M.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweet a reporter saying the Mississippi schools will say no, which I don't understand. I don't understand why. I don't understand the mechanics of why.
Shannon, would you have any idea as to maybe another team in the SEC that wouldn't allow this to happen?
No, and like the Mississippi schools, I think of their head coaches Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach, like they would very much welcome Big 12 coming into the
That's true.
SEC.
Yeah,
that's
and
true.
Mike Leach getting to play against former Big 12 teams and Lane Kiffin and like their egos and their
Yeah, that only
antics,
benefits
like,
them.
If they get a say as part of that organization to say yes or no, I feel like they would very strongly say yes, bring them on.
Now, the thing that's going to benefit Texas and OU is preseason rankings, because I think preseason rankings are a joke anyway. There should be no teams that are ranked before week 4 until we actually play football. But the SEC is going to get ranked in the top 10 a ridiculous amount. So then you get to lose to a number 8 team when that team's probably not even going to be ranked at the end of the year, like an Auburn or whoever, who's going to be overly ranked and overly hyped just for what conference they're in. And so you're going to get situations like that where you're Texas and Oklahoma, you're going to be in the SEC and you're going to be like, all right, cool. We're sitting pretty at number 6, number 7 to start the year. That gives us more leeway to screw up whenever we lose to Auburn, who is also ranked at like number 12, although that Auburn team probably shouldn't even be ranked, or is that like, a bottom tier team that's ranked there just higher ranked just because of what conference they sit in. That's been my whole problem with the SEC to start seasons off anyway, but I guess that will technically now benefit OU and Texas.
Tanner Carlson is a great follow on Twitter at Tanner Carlson 20. Tanner, we will put you down for a no vote on Texas to the SEC.
Down for a no. I see the benefits to it. I do. And I'm not 100% against it or 100% for it. I'm kind of sitting on the fence right now, but if I had to choose one side or the other, I just hate the SEC. So I'm jumping on the no ship.
Tanner, no. Shannon, yes. Chris, yes. We'll see how this one goes. All right, much more coming up. We'll take a look at the Olympics and everything else that is popping in the world of sports. Thank you, Dave Ayler, for the Tanner Carlson Tan Man, the Monkey Man sound effect. Lots more coming up. We're with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Yeah, I just ran out of time. I already hit 29 there.
Good.
So,
I knew that conversation was going to be a lengthy one.
That was fun, though. And I'm glad because, I mean, I'm all in, and I'm glad you brought that other perspective. That was fun.
It's kind of boring when everybody has the same.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Yes. That was a great take.
But I just don't think that Texas and OU, regardless of where they're at, they're still going to have. If they have the same success, they're still going to be in the same situation.
Yeah.
They're still going to have to go through the same teams at some point in time. But trust me, I know the money's there. I know the TV deals.
And I just think it's the most elite. It's the best conference in football.
And if I'm sitting on my couch as a non-football or as a non-fan of either team, if I'm an unbiased spectator and I get to see Texas take on LSU every year or Oklahoma take on Florida every year, of course, that's great.
And as a bonus, we get Texas versus Texas A&M back. And I know you make the point that OU Texas is a bigger game. It is, but I still think that's a big game. That Texas versus that's a big game that we should.
It's fun for the state of Texas.
Yes.
I don't think anybody outside of Texas or the Big 12 cared that much.
Yeah.
It never had implications of playoffs or bowl games or anything like that because A&M was always a 500 team.
Yeah.
And Texas was a top 5 team in the country when they were playing. So it never had implications. Now that Texas A&M is a better program and they're a top 10 team, it might have.
Now you've got Jimbo Fisher versus Sark, which is a
but
cool thing.
I did read that Sark being hired on at Texas, he said one of the big things is he wants to get into the SEC.
Wow.
That was one of his selling points.
Yeah.
You can hire me, but there has to be an effort to get to the SEC.
Wow. Okay.
So it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be. I won't be surprised if it happens.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I don't think there's two other teams other than A&M and Mizzou. And Mizzou can easily be persuaded. It's more so A&M that's going to have an issue with it. But Mizzou can be persuaded easily, I think.
Yeah, I think if the powers that be in the SEC want it, even if, and I would think even if there were 4 no votes.
The SEC is more powerful than the NCAA.
Yeah.
Because the NCAA needs the SEC. The SEC doesn't need the NCAA.
True.
If the SEC was like, we're done with the NCAA and we're moving to another, they would still be as successful as
You're right.
anybody else.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the SEC is probably the most powerful board of whatever than anybody in the country when it comes to college athletics.
Yeah.
So, like you said, if they want it that way, they're going to get it.
Yeah. Going to be fun to find out.
It will be. It will be.
All right.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah, and we'll talk about figuring out what's next, how we do it.
Tomorrow I'm bringing tacos. You want a particular taco?
No, just whatever you bring. I'm not. If tacos are spectacular, however they're constructed, but thank you. Jason, I believe it's a PR firm. I haven't heard specifically where Tanner's going. Yeah, I understand A&M's position. It's like Back to the Future for them. It could be headed back toward being in the shadow of Texas because it's such a huge brand. And the one thing that A&M had was saying, hey, we got the SEC, we got big boy football. They don't. Eric Clapton, baby. He is coming to Austin. Eric Clapton, this song, Layla, written about his best friend's woman. His best friend was George Harrison. His woman was Patty Boyd. So he wrote Layla for Patty Boyd, and Patty and Eric went to George Harrison and said, you know, we kind of got a thing here. And George said, all right, whatever. Go ahead. George was cool that way. That was a weird situation. Welcome. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Lots of coverage today, and it is appropriate to talk UT and Oklahoma to the SEC. The Dallas Cowboys, the big press conference yesterday with Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and head coach Mike McCarthy. First Dallas Cowboys official practice will be at 11 o'clock this morning, San Antonio time. Now, Shannon, we've talked a lot about name, image, and likeness and how it is revolutionizing how college athletes are getting paid. And forget college athletes, a big name in the news today, Mikey Williams. Remember the name Mikey Williams? Woj. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting this morning that Mikey Williams, who is in high school, let's see, he is attending Lake Norman Christian in Huntersville, North Carolina. He is in the class of 2023. He has signed a deal with a company called XL Sports Management, and their vice president, Matt Davis, says this agreement that XL Sports Management has reached with high schooler Mikey Williams will generate millions of dollars for basketball player Mikey Williams while he's in high school. A high school kid making millions of dollars for a name, image, and likeness endorsement. This story, Shannon, with name, image, and likeness just gets weirder and weirder and weirder.
I think we're getting into dangerous territory when we start getting them this young. Kind of like a don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
Thing. Not to say that he's going to get injured, but there's always that possibility before he makes it to the next level, and then maybe he's not the same depending on what it is. He's still in high school, so don't pass, don't play. Maybe he doesn't get that playing time. Maybe he isn't really what you thought he was, right? Because he's a rising junior. Boys, we know, don't really start to develop physically until that senior year. So maybe he's not that great compared to his counterparts. Maybe those counterparts just haven't hit their stride yet as far as puberty is concerned. And then the money thing is, it's so crazy because say he earns all this money before he even gets to college. Who's to say he's like, you know what? Maybe I did suffer a little injury, or maybe I've found something that isn't quite right with my body. It's not worth it. I've already made this $1 million. I've got a great investment plan. I've had great help along the way. I don't want to go to college. I don't want to go play professionally. I've made my money. I'm good. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to reinvest this money instead and stay healthy and whatever. And then all those people that invest are like, wait a minute, but you were going to keep building our brand. You were going to, our whole thing was you playing basketball. Why aren't you going to play basketball? And then we get into that. And you sent me this article, and there's the possibility of a shoe deal. I think he should go with Nike just because his name is Mikey. Mikey, Nike.
Ooh,
Nike.
see?
That's just like the branding. It's already there for you.
You're right.
But he goes with Nike. Does that take out the Jayhawks, who are an Adidas school, right? Does that where does that come into play? I think we're getting into some dangerous territory. Obviously, there's going to have to be something along the way as we keep going through this. We're only in week 3, week 4 of this. There's going to have to be something that's like some rule book, as insane as that might be, and as long as it might have to be, because I think it's getting into dangerous territory here.
And I think about this, Shannon. Mikey Williams, he's 17 years old right now. I just Wikipedia'd him. He was born on June 26th, 2004. And imagine Mikey Williams already in high school, and he's 17 now, already making millions of dollars. And whatever your favorite NBA team is, for you, it's the Dallas Mavericks. For me, it's the San Antonio Spurs. Can you imagine, and whoever's listening right now, you think of your favorite NBA team. I mean, and Shannon, for you, Jason Kidd drafts Mikey Williams, who comes to the Mavericks at age 18. And what if he doesn't like the way things are being done in Dallas? Or, what if Mikey Williams doesn't like Coach Pop? It's like, hey man, I don't need to do that. I'm Mikey Williams. Don't you know who I am? I agree. You mentioned, going to Kansas or going to a college program. I think too often now, and I think it's hurting NBA franchises. You invest all of this money in a kid, and they're still kids when they come to the NBA at this age, who are undeveloped. I mean, Milwaukee got lucky. They got Giannis at age 18, but they got a young man at age 18 who was disciplined, who was motivated, who wasn't making millions of dollars, who his family and his mom were looking for places to eat when he was a teenager. He had to go sleep at the gym where he was working out in Greece, and he learned the hard way how you had to work your way up and succeed. So they got lucky with their 18-year-old Giannis Antetokounmpo. But Mikey Williams, I hope he can keep it together character-wise and discipline-wise to continue to grow as a basketball player instead of just a multi-millionaire at this young age.
That's a great piece to all of that too. I mean, we hear it in the NFL a lot where these guys have big heads and they're making more money than some of these coaches, depending on their position. And so that's part of where they kind of get this idea and feeling of power and getting, these quarterbacks getting a say-so in the overall team because they are paid more than the guy who's supposedly in charge of them. And that has for a long time been the argument of why they don't want to pay players directly from these schools, is because, well, they're paying these coaches millions of dollars. And then what happens when kids start making more money from these coaches? Are they going to be disrespectful? Are they not going to allow themselves to be coached by this person because of the price tag that is out there online for everyone to see? And I think that's great. When you mentioned Mikey, would he play the do you know who I am? Again, dangerous territory we're getting into.
And as you mentioned, Shannon, we're only like 3 weeks in now to name, image, and likeness. And already now we're hearing, and I got to be honest with you, and you and I talk sports on the radio every morning. I didn't know who Mikey Williams was, but according to this Excel Sports Marketing, he's worth millions of dollars. So they've entered into this marketing agreement with him. So they're sure they can start signing him to. I love you ought to be a consultant on the Mikey Williams team, the Nike Mikeys. There's his shoe. Get the Mikey from Nike right there. That's perfect.
And he's only number 7 on the ESPN's top list.
Yeah. What about the top 6 now?
Followers.
Who's number 1? How much you want to pay that kid?
Right. Whatever you're doing, why haven't we heard your name? But again, like you said, they're kids and they're getting these contracts and these deals, and it's more than just like signing the dotted line and then smiling and saying, try this. I think these deals should be going to people like you and I who are true professionals.
Well, and again, and Shannon, to your point, because they're kids, sometime soon, kids do stupid things. We know that. We were kids. Somebody's going to sign one of these kids to a multi-million-dollar marketing deal. They're going to get a shoe deal. They're going to get a Sprite deal or whatever. And then this kid is going to go do something stupid because that's what kids do. And so there's going to be a major brand that is going to have major egg on its face because this kid is representing their brand, and the kid's going to go out and do something stupid.
And we're not saying Mikey specifically is going to be that guy.
We don't know that yet.
There will be somebody, and whether or not it's a huge mistake that like normal people wouldn't ever make, or it's a small mistake that kids just make, but they happen to have this large following, so it's seen by everyone and talked about by everyone. That is going to be huge. So, they're putting in these programs in place, right, at colleges like Texas, where they're going to help not only players create brand awareness, but learn how to manage that money that comes in and do all of the things that are involved, because it's basically like taking on another job when you get these endorsement deals. They're going to have to start implementing these things in high school. I mean, I think they already should. Like, why are we still like learning about how to make volcanoes when we should be learning about how to do our taxes and such
Yeah.
and do them so we don't go to jail? Like, they should be having those classes. And if this is going to start to be the thing, like these ESPN lists, like they're almost contributing to it, right? Because what do the lists really do? Well, they're just lists. They don't really matter, just like recruiting. Like, it's until
Right.
you get on that next field of play to prove what you actually can do, does it actually matter? But because we have these lists, they're getting paid for it.
And you know what's next, Shannon? After all this money going to Mikey Williams and other high school kids, I think the Kardashians are going to start dating high school kids. It's like, I mean, they glom onto these NBA athletes who are like 20.
They all have kids, and I think the oldest one has a kid that's like maybe 11.
So yeah, the kids of the
They're just
Kardashians
gonna start pimping their kids.
Right. It's like, hey, you need to be dating Mikey Williams because he makes millions and millions of dollars. So yeah, go to the prom with Mikey Williams, young Kardashian child. All right, Shannon. On that note, our poll question today, we're very curious about how our listeners and viewers feel about the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners going to the SEC. Is it something that we support? Tanner Carlson, not too down with it. You and I like the idea. How do our listeners feel about it?
Yeah, so we've got 3 options today on should Texas and OU move to the SEC. 38% saying no, 31% saying yes, and 29% saying, oh, hell yes. I think that's a yes, Chris.
Yeah, I am in the oh hell yes category. I love the idea. I just think the SEC is the pinnacle of college football and all athletics, and why not? Texas and Oklahoma believe that they're the best of the best, brand wise and athletic wise. Go play with and against the best. And can you imagine, Shannon, LSU, Georgia, Alabama regularly coming to Austin and the Longhorns going on the road to play those teams? I think it's cool.
It's going to be crazy because this is obviously like the question is, will it happen? And then I think if the answer is yes, it's going to be then when is it going to happen? Texas has Alabama scheduled for 2022 and 2023.
Wow.
So either way, they're playing Bama soon.
Yeah, one way that's next year.
Right. And depending on where this conversation is, people could change their mind. They could prove their point, depending on how those games pan out. And it is the second game on the schedule for Texas next season. So it's not like they're opening the season with Bama, thank goodness.
So
practice a little bit in live action.
Texas versus Bama. Get used to it.
Wow.
No matter what, a year from now, Stark versus Saban. That's going to be fun. As those two guys who were colleagues are going to face off. Very, very cool. Shannon, what a morning. Great show. Great salty shakedown. Outstanding as always. Let's do it again in 21 hours.
Let's do it, sir, on Friday.
Yeah, we'll talk all Mikey Williams tomorrow, the new 72-year-old millionaire. Dave Ayler, thank you, sir. You rock.
Thanks. Let's bring on Friday. I'm ready.
Friday is coming. Our thanks to Tanner Carlson as well. Keep it right here all day long. Your chance to win $1,000 on every 20. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you mañana. Adios, amigos.